my preparation for this is I just know the poems really well. I know where I'm headed, and I know like there's a couple things I need to hear in order to know that we're on the right track, right? And so like that's essentially what was guiding me through it. So this is not to say teachers shouldn't script things out if it helps them, they should, but what it really requires is just really deeply understanding the literature that you're going to hear from somebody, and really getting the deeper meaning yourself if that's the case at all. Yeah. So like that, so the key part of the preparation here is doing what we just did, which is like digging in deep.
Yeah, and like we're not going to be able to have time to do a close reading session. Like this was a close reading session, or like part one of it. But if you're taking anything away when you start to set your teachers up for shared reading, which is using close reading, they have to know the text backwards and forwards. They have to be able to hear like a student response or a teacher response, like Eric brought something up, Lindsay brought up a different point, and to be able to think like, what do I know about this text? Let's go back to the text. What question can I ask? Well enough to be able to drive that discussion rather than just like freezing, accepting mediocre answers, and then moving on, which I think is like, it's a really challenging skill, but drive at teachers understanding the text and then making sure that you're using a formula, but also pushing beyond that when it comes up.
Great. So let me just wrap up. I didn't realize I actually stopped you guys early because I scheduled well. I thought I did. I wanted to just finish with this one last slide, which is managing meaning. And the questions are, what will our schools look, feel, and sound like when all the adults are around them now? So I put that to you. What will our schools look, feel, and sound like when adults who are teaching kids are around them at this time of the
meeting? Student conversations will be focused on each other and not just a dialogue with the individual kid.
And why would that be the case with those adult dialogue?
Because when I didn't answer the question. I thought it's adults and students. So.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I don't think you're wrong, though.
Right.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think our schools you will see adults ask these deeper level questions to the teaching meeting instead of the surface level. What happened in your book today? The default question might be, what was the deeper meaning about what you read today?
I think it'll bleed into their content as well, though. So it won't just be about your book that you're reading, but it could also be around the text you read in science or the text you read in history.
I think it also calls for like refinement. Like if you taught your lesson first, and then you begin the third period, and like you saw how that discussion went first as a teacher, you're like already in your head. Like these are some things they brought up that maybe you thought about or like some people like you just said you trying to refine it so like everybody would get that.
Imitations from adults and students will be much more purposeful, and like I can look at imitation and see if it's like aimed at getting a meaning or anything.
I think your teachers would be interacting with one another more often, like before and after lessons. So like when I worked with kids and staff was like we like exhausted each other talking through every lesson and what the outcome was and how we were gonna get there and how each other did it. And that made us like really powerful as a team, and so I'd expect to see that with teachers.
I would expect to hear conversations about what things mean. Right? I'd expect to hear conversations where they're not talking about, teachers or kids talking about a particular skill to the exclusion of the meaning of the thing that they're around. And I expect it to sound more like a really great high school English class and a mediocre, lame one. And so, I don't know, I think it should be a lot more sparkling conversations in classes and much less in the procedure. Structure is important. Like, we need to have structures for these lessons that are known by teachers, but just like CGI, like, it doesn't stop just when you know the structure. What would a total investment in understanding what being ideal look like, and what would it require logistically? So I guess the question here is, like, what would have to change in order for us to really make sure that teachers are really investing in the idea every single time?
I think it has to be part of planning and check-in structures. We have to be talking about the texts with teachers in advance of their teaching them.
And in a particular way. We have to talk about it not just as this obviously has a tendency to go to the procedural too. Everybody's like, okay, what do you got for me, an idea? Great, let's move on.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as like, Catherine Switzer was a famous, gymnast, I don't know what Catherine Switzer was, but she was something. As long as like you capture that aspect of the biography, people are moving on, and no one is delving deeply into the text itself. Like that would be a bad use of a plan meeting, versus one where there was actual debate, and you also had a leader of the plan meeting who was able to coalesce that into an idea that. Kate, you're gonna say?
I think like something that we're gonna have to invest teachers in this main idea. I think I was kind of saying what you were saying, like it's not just step one. It's not like come to the main idea and then move on. I think it's like you cannot move on until this happens. And so I think like really like getting teachers to prioritize this and not looking so much at like other standards and figuring it out, because I think you can get lost in like, but I need to teach this standard, but it's like, but no, this only is in support of this.
Is there a world where teachers could have scintillating discussions with kids about books and poems and texts in the classroom and never speak to another adult in the building about poems and books and texts? Is that likely? Not likely. Possible, not likely.
What you did is the modeling of us having a discussion with those students. Like, you have to, for a student to listen to other people say main idea is boring. For students to have a discussion the way that we did about Rosebush is really engaging and exciting. And so the check-in sessions have to model the dialogue that should be taking place amongst the participants, and not just saying, like, here's what we did. Yep.
I think we also need to be really careful and make sure guided reading is like rooted in main ideas and like all of these other aspects of like our literacy program is like comes from this main idea, and not saying like when we close read we are like looking at meaning, but like when you read your book you're not like you do these other isolated skills and make sure that like kids and teachers are very clear that meaning and main idea like cross are like the
In a way, I kind of wish we'd done this the opposite and had Allie's basketball dream come after, because you can see that that's a guided reading lesson with a certain set of readers reading at the same level who are struggling with the same things, but it was relentlessly focused on what this was about, right? Like it was about the story and not about like some discrete skill, even though undoubtedly Aaron was driving discrete skills with that. Okay?
They didn't have to write the main idea at the very end, so could you kind of just like have a conversation about the main idea, and then like at the very end you guys provide it as a meeting, but you don't have to put it on a poster board?
I think the weakest part of this was we didn't actually get to a finished main idea that each person had written. Like ideally, I would have you as an exit ticket, even as adults, write the main idea for a story, and I could evaluate each and every one of you separately. Like Lennon could be hiding back there, harboring all these great ideas about the poems, and I wouldn't know, right, because I hadn't heard directly from him about it. And so I think, no, I think I would actually want everybody to coalesce around a written main idea. Great.
Guided reading, yeah. Okay, so we are going to do a lot of practice today for guided reading. Let me just pull up the online PowerPoint.
Do you need the video on?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly pop it up so we have some. Thank you. All right, so we are check out our goals. Hillian, will you read them out loud for us?
Goals. Leaders will be able to execute a guided reading book introduction. Leaders will be able to execute a guided reading wrap-up. Leaders will practice lean-in coaching.
Okay. And so we're going to do this a couple rounds of practice. And the first part is we're going to build a mental representation a la the book Peak. I think it's really helpful. You've seen the video, but it was short. And also, like, we were rushed. And so I want, before we go into practicing, I want us to make sure we're, like, able to practice as perfectly as possible. So we're going to actually do, like, a fishbowl style observation of a guided reading lesson. And so W is going to lead us in that. And I'm going to stop throughout it, so thank you, W. And we're going to look at how the framework is being used throughout it, so that when you go to give yours, you can steal some of her moves and also some of the feedback we come up with in execution. All right, so if you are in Emily's group, which is the shark group, go ahead and stand up. And we're going to have to do some movement. So I'm going to have all 5 or 6 of you at, let's have you all sit in the middle here, and then you guys can stand up and just stand around them. Emily,
Do they want a table, or we don't need one?
you don't need a table.
Okay. Oh goodness, I get to be video. Do I need this?
Yep, stand around to connect. All right, if you're in the shark group, you're rolling on your chairs. If you are not in the shark group, let's go ahead and let's all stand. I think we could deal with this standing. Okay.
Can I have all of your books? And then we'll pass them around.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, that's fine. And so while you're observing,
Oh,
I want
gotcha.
you to be looking not at your lesson, at the
Y'all will have to
guided
figure it
reading
out.
lesson plan framework. So that if you need a copy, I have extras for you. So you want to put me in this? No, I just want you to look at the broad one. And so Emily's going to start off with the book introduction and things that we're looking for. Capturing the interest with the book, briefly telling students what the book is about, essential vocabulary that is meaningful, so I want us to pay particular attention to that. Is she picking smart words, or is she picking high-level words that are like more scientific that might not be as like important to the story? She gives a heads up and then a thinking job. All right, go ahead, get started.
Cool. Scholars, I know that in science we've been learning about a lot of different types of animals, and so today we're going to read a book about an animal. It's one of my favorites. If you watch the Discovery Channel, it might be one of your favorites too. We're going to read a book about sharks. So today we're reading a book all about sharks. It's by Jim Armosky, and it's a nonfiction. So that means everything we learn in this book is going to be true. And so when Shark Week comes on in another week or so, we'll already know a lot of information about sharks from the book we read today. Before we get started and I give you your copies, I want to talk about 2 words. I want to talk about the word species, and I want to talk about the word family. And it's a little bit different than the context that we think about when we think about our families. So in the book, you're going to come to a page pretty soon on, and it's going to say that worldwide there are 250 species of sharks. Then, when you read a little bit further, it's going to say that there are 4 families of sharks. So in science, there are groupings of different animals. A family is a larger group, and then it gets way more specific into individual species. So as you read, you're going to learn about the 4 types of families of sharks, but then you're also going to learn about the smaller species of sharks. And I don't want that to confuse you while you read, and so I wanted to go over it before you get your copies of the book. Because we're reading a nonfiction text today, our thinking job is going to be, what is this author, Jim Armosky, trying to teach us in this book? Because we know in nonfiction texts, they're true, and they're always trying to teach us something. So I'm going to hand you your copies, and as you are reading, those are the 2 things that I want you to be thinking about today.
So, anything. What did Emily do really well, and how did she follow this framework?
Very clear the steps that she was on
quick. This would have been easy to sort of go off.
Do you think it was enough?
I think
Yeah. What about vocabulary?
smart vocabulary. Families, like, it's not hard. No one like doesn't know what it means, but in context, it's something different. That's important.
Anna, do you want to add to that?
I think the two words together, like using the family. I wouldn't say like, I was actually just in two families or just in two species, because I think like those two words together is
I think there were a lot of distractors in this book that I could have chose. So like microscopic is in here. At one point it's like, I don't know if it's linear or non-linear, basically just saying like along the side of the shark. And so I like found myself wanting to write those words down that are like essentially like hard for kids to understand. But I think the question that I came back to in my head and stayed with just species and families is this essential for kids to understand the book? And when I read it, I went back and forth between those two pages thinking like, wait, a species and a like, how many times are they telling us groups of sharks? And so I think that's why I chose only those two, just to kind of like give you where my thinking was.
That's a great way to like always think about the vocab aspect, is it should always be driving a deeper meaning, which is specifically like what we just talked about. You want to dive into the next section?
I do, and I want to also name that I missed a part. So I missed my like heads up. What I was going to tell students, and I can like jump in and just role play it now, is if pretend you guys didn't have your books yet. Students, I also want you to pay attention to one thing in the book. This book, because it's nonfiction, has a lot of information. And so when you're on a normal page, you're going to see the big letters that we normally read in our text, but you're also going to see what we call text features. And in this book, our text features is that there's little comments next to pictures and different diagrams in this book. And so I want you to read it a specific way. I want you to read the page, like the regular words on the page that we're seeing that I'm pointing to, and then I want you to go through and read the small print and the text features, because those are going to add to letting you know what the author is trying to teach us today. And so I want to make sure that we're not ignoring any of those text features as we read.
And then when you close it, you're thinking about one more time.
Cool. Yes. Because it is nonfiction, our thinking job is going to be, what is the author trying to teach us? We know that when we read nonfiction, it is a true text, and so we always want to be thinking about what this book is teaching us in particular. I want you to keep that in your head as you read. When I conference with you, that's mostly what we're going to talk about today. You can go ahead and start reading on your own. I could.
Yeah. Let's do a quick one, and then
Sure.
she's going to roll into conference, and we're going to start using the second section.
Cool. Robert, what are you going to be doing today? What's our thinking job? What's our question that we're asking ourselves while we read?
What is the author trying to tell us about sharks throughout the book?
Great. And Kate, why is that our thinking job today?
because it's nonfiction, and we know nonfiction authors always trying to teach us something.
Great. Get started. I might like give them a minute or two to get a couple pages in before I start like asking them.
And she just started taking notes already. Said prep for conferences.
You want me to plant anything with someone? Like, do you want like who is my low or medium or high, or just go with questioning?
I want you to go with questioning.
Okay.
And I want you to not use text evidence. Everyone else answers fine. Would you be good at normal level?
Mhm.
Whisper.
So, Habes, what do you know about sharks so far? I'm sorry. Victoria, what do you know about sharks so far?
They're in all of the oceans, and there's a lot of them.
Awesome. And when the author is telling you these things, what are you starting to think that the author might be trying to teach you?
Well, all of the different types of sharks are on this page, and it talks about their length, so maybe that they're all different, including their length too.
Okay, so they're all different. Do you think as you continue to read this book, it's going to keep talking about like the shark's length and things like that? What do you think the author is going to continue to talk about in the book? I like that you flipped a peek. Yeah, probably what?
The different things these different types of sharks do.
Awesome. Okay. I want you to keep thinking of that as you keep going. What is this author trying to teach me? And if you need to
tweak what you're thinking about right now, since you're only on pages like 1 and 2, you can change it as you go. Cool. Alex, what do you know about sharks so far reading the book?
Well, I learned there's a lot of different types of sharks, and this page I just got to showed me that they're broken up into 4 different kinds of like groups.
What do we call that? That was one of our vocab words.
Oh, a family.
A family. And they're broken up into different families, and then what are they broken up into beyond a family?
Well, I went to like a little smaller print over here because this actually didn't show me, and it gave me like different types of names of sharks. So I think those are the other one you told me, species of sharks.
Awesome. What do you think this author is trying to teach you? And I'm really proud of you for using all that vocabulary you just used.
Well, so far, I think he's just trying to teach us that like there's lots of different types of sharks, but we need to know that they're all not the same.
Okay, cool. I want you to keep that in your mind. And if that changes as you go, then adjust it, but keep thinking about what this author is trying to teach you. I'm going to go around so I can be behind them. Hey, Kate.
Hey.
What are you learning so far? Ooh, this is one of my favorite pages. What are you learning so far about sharks?
Yeah, sharks are like really cool and like they're really dangerous. They like want to eat people.
Oh no. What told you so far in the book that sharks are dangerous and want to eat people? Can you show me it?
Let's see. The scent of blood in the water can attract dozens of sharks and trigger a feeding frenzy.
Okay, but what is that sentence telling you though?
That when they smell blood, they're going to come attack.
Okay. Does that tell you though that they want to eat people?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So when you keep going, Kate, I want you to think about...
But don't humans have blood?
Yeah. So what's the difference there? You said that it's not telling you directly they want to eat people. They want to do what?
If they smell blood, they're going to come eat.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be people.
Now, if a person had a really huge cut on their leg, is that different? Yeah, okay. So in general, I know we kind of talked just about this specific part, but I'm going to ask you my question again so that you can kind of tell me even a bigger idea that you have about this whole book. Because look, you're like 7 pages in. So what about sharks have you learned overall so far?
I've learned...
and you can flip back, that's totally fine.
I've learned like there's different types of sharks and about like how their bodies are made.
Cool, so it's not just all about them wanting to eat people, right? Okay, Kate, as you read, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to keep thinking about what the author is trying to teach you, but I want you in your head, when you come up with something, to also make sure it's in this book, okay? Awesome.
Okay, let's pause there. So she's doing conferencing, that's what I like. Okay, what did Emily do well during the conferencing section?
She kept reminding them about the thinking drive. Everybody she left with that question. Even like with Kate having a second job, she still made sure that she told her like what's the first and foremost job.
It went back to what the book was about. It wasn't kind of about a certain feature. It wasn't about the vocabulary necessarily that she has to what was the main idea of the text that we're reading.
She did a really good job questioning Kate. She could have like finished the conference once Kate gave her like a mildly satisfactory response and like, great, that's over. Because I see a lot of times she just get like, hey, it's tense. You're nervous. You might not know exactly what question to ask her next. So once she goes, no, it's not about humans get eaten by sharks. Keep going.
What about, did she do lean coaching? So like lean in coaching, that means like fast. Did you see evidence of that?
Maybe with Victoria. She could have like asked her a question and given her an answer.
I think with these 2, she was fast because they were showing that they understood. But that was really smart that she didn't continue to like come up with like, you don't have to like come up with some like crazy high level question, especially in the beginning of the book. She knew that they were understanding, she didn't save time with the next person, and then Kate showed a misunderstanding. It allowed her to spend a little bit more time
Mhm.
What could she do better next time?
This is really small, but when Kate reveals her misunderstanding, you were sort of leading her with your inflection of your tone. Make it more flat so that she's actually making those connections.
Okay.
Did you notice what Kate said? She said two things, that sharks are dangerous and sharks are cool.
Yeah, and I hit on the dangerous and wanting to eat humans and not on the cool part. Yeah.
And so if you were to replay that scenario, how would you tackle the cool part?
I probably would say, what have you read so far that makes you think sharks are really cool? And maybe go into that, because that's probably like actual evidence in the book, and that would have been like an easy, like, great. So your opinion is that sharks are cool based on what you're reading, and then I would have went into like the bigger misunderstanding, which is I think what I jumped to first. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not a problem. She thinks sharks are cool. I want to go into like the issue of eating humans, which isn't in here. Yeah. I think it's good though, because she can't write a main idea saying like sharks are cool unless she wants to argue that that's the author's point of view, which would be okay in this book.
I think that you have to be sensitive about what the other kids in the circle are doing when you're speaking to one of the kids. So there's a couple of times, especially when Alex was going, that other kids were literally watching and trying to change what Alex was reading the book. So just being aware of the fact that there are other readers and then having a quick line to get to each of them about getting back to the book.
Cool.
Is there like scary territory where like, and when Emily asked like, what if I had a big cut on my leg? Like the fact that Kate is already like on that like misunderstanding line, and even though I like guided her back there, like not wanting her to like wonder about like, oh, you know, like the what if.
I would say as tight space as possible. And especially for a student who's already going off into like opinions and using prior knowledge to defend their answer to your question. I would always go back to the text. So let's look at this page. I see you see a picture of the shark. Tell me what piece of evidence proves that sharks are dangerous.
It does on the next page, like say like if you have a cut. Like I knew like when she said it, and I was actually like, this will be really great because when I turned the page, it actually like specifically.
And I knew that in the book. I knew it was going to come up, so I think, so to step aside, I think the deeper meaning aside from just the author teaching us that sharks are all different is that like humans can coexist with sharks in this, even though this is a really basic book. And so I wanted her to kind of understand that like they're not just going to attack a human for no reason. So that's kind of where I was going.
Okay, so let's come back and end the conferencing section and do a wrap up. So check out the wrap up.
Okay. So like the discussing the text. Okay. All right, scholars, we're going to come back together and we're going to talk about this book. I appreciated talking to each of you a little bit as you read, but I want us to collectively think about our thinking job. Alex, what was our thinking job throughout this text?
It was to think about what the author was trying to tell us.
Great. And so as we read this text, my first question, and I'm going to ask it and then I'll call someone to tell me, is what is the book we just read mostly about? So everyone kind of take a minute and get a couple sentences in your head. What is this book mostly about? Victoria, what do you think the book is mostly about?
It's about sharks in the ocean.
Okay.
They do.
Okay. Anybody want to add a little bit to what she said? So sharks in the ocean. What else? Alex, can you add on to it?
It like describes like what makes a shark. So like what types of things you would find on a shark, on all sharks.
Okay.
Like fins and their different eyes, and they have a lot of fins.
Awesome. Kate, anything to add to that?
Yeah.
So what types of sharks, what makes sharks or that type of animal? What else?
It tells us like some of the things that sharks do, like what they eat.
Keep going.
It's like tells us like what sharks do in the ocean, like what they eat and how they like have like babies and things.
Great. I see all of us like naturally opening our book as you guys are telling me things. I want everybody to go back in the book, put your finger on one piece of evidence that supports what these three ladies just said the book is mostly about.
That's something different when I read.
Okay. What'd you get, Robert?
I think it was telling me more about the species and the families that they belong to.
Okay. How is that different from what these ladies said?
It kind of ties into what Kate said.
Okay.
About knowing more about sharks.
So the other two said that it's telling us what makes sharks sharks. And so how does that connect to species?
By the different families that they belong to. I guess by their fins and things like that. I guess.
That's what helps them like be identified as a specific species, right? So no, this is great. So do you see how it connects now? Tell me how it connects.
Because the book is mostly about sharks and telling us what is different about sharks, what differs from shark to shark, and the families of the species that they belong to.
Awesome. So I want us to continue looking for evidence of what we kind of just put together is what this book is mostly about. Victoria has her finger on one. I want to see all of us there. We might do a really quick whip around so you can all tell me your piece of evidence. 30 more seconds, Alex.
Instead of
Yeah.
doing a whip around, let's frame it more as a discussion. So what is this text mostly about? Ask one of them and then have someone else use their evidence to prove it.
Cool. Okay. So let's go back to our thinking job is what is the author trying to teach us? We're going to start with what is this text mostly about. So Kate, what is the text mostly about?
It is mostly about sharks and what makes a shark a shark.
Great. Go back in the text, everyone, and actually, let's just do Victoria. Will you give us evidence that supports what Kate just said this text is mostly about?
Well, there's a lot of evidence. Kate said that the text is mostly about the sharks, and I'm not trying to be intentionally difficult, I promise. The sharks and the types of different sharks. So for that piece of evidence, you could go to, just don't have page numbers, the pages at the beginning that talk about the species and the families of sharks. So that tells me different types of sharks.
Can you read me a specific line that tells you?
It says, worldwide there are more than 250 species of sharks. Here are the 9 most familiar species, and each of the text, these pieces of these facts are telling me the types. So bull shark is a type of species.
Awesome.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Alex, do you agree that Victoria's piece of evidence proves that this text is mostly about sharks? What other piece of evidence might prove that this text is about sharks?
So do I agree with her or another piece of evidence or both?
Both.
Okay. Well, not kind of. Like it talks about like them inhabiting the waters and that there's different types of sharks, but it doesn't necessarily like tell me that the book is going to be talking about like all the different things that make a shark a shark. I almost like this piece at the very beginning that today's sharks are predators that feed on other living things. It makes me think that the rest of this book is probably going to talk about sharks being predators.
And where did you see evidence of sharks being predators? Kate.
A shark can locate prey by sight or smell, by sensing movement with its lateral line. And this whole page talks about how sharks smell food and then go eat other fish and sometimes other sharks.
So then why did the author tell us about the different types of sharks? Because we know that sharks are predators, but why are we talking about the different species and families of sharks?
To let us know that there are just more than one type of shark. There are different sharks that they exist in different areas of the world. So.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Well, in some sharks, there's some things that all sharks have. Like it says sharks do not have bones, and that said all sharks. But then on the teeth page, it talks about how some sharks have different teeth, and it like shows us pictures and everything.
And not just what's different about the teeth.
They are used for different things.
Not just their use, but look at the.
Oh, they look different.
Right. And what does that allow them to do?
To eat differently.
And with different success rates, right? So then you continue on with the wrap up. So here's what I'm trying to illustrate. Emily did a great job of introducing this with like a text-based discussion, what was happening was a lot of ping pong back and forth between her and the students. So she went to Robert, and her and Robert had a discussion. Her and Victoria had a discussion, and then these two were kind of out. What you want to do is ask a question, gather data on where your kids are. They were giving topics, not main ideas, right? They were saying like it's about sharks. So we want to push them past that. What you want to do is also then have kids listen to one another by posing them questions, making them defend or refute other people's answers. And by doing that, you both like get a discussion happening, which is part of the engagement aspect. But it also, they are forced to evaluate another person's answer, which is how you get like critical thinking happening. Okay? So as much as possible, so like with the Robert scenario, I would try to take his initial question. He said something about species, right? Like that's where the line of questioning you're going. And I would throw it to Kate. What do you think, Kate, about that? Okay? Because it was you two.
Yeah, he like didn't agree with. Yeah.
Can I ask what your main idea was?
Yeah. Yeah, because my three questions were, what is the book we read mostly about, and like what are the big ideas that the author is trying to get at, and then going into like what was that author trying to teach us. So like those are my scaffolded questions. My main idea was there are many different species of sharks. All sharks are fierce predators that live in the ocean. Humans have to ensure that they are safe around beaches and shallow water. And maybe that one was a detail at the ocean because of sharks. So they felt like the author was also trying to get at this idea of like humans can be around sharks, but they have to be aware of specific things, as much as he was also trying to teach people about sharks.
One of the questions I had was, so what are scholars doing when, and I think this might be addressed by like having a more discussion, but what are scholars doing when you're posing your question as the teacher poses the question, and then they're either like, so sometimes Kate would state her main idea, and then Victoria would already be looking either for her main idea or Alex would be looking for her details, but they're not listening to Kate. So when you ask Alex to support Kate's main idea, and my second question, how do scholars know?
And why were they not listening?
Because of the conversation between each and one student, not those in group stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't because of, I think it was like, and I don't think it wasn't intentional, but I think like because she had a couple dialogues that were her and student, kids got the point really quickly that that's how this was going to continue, and that she was caring about each individual idea they had, but not that they all came to a collective idea. So we could definitely set norms. So I want to make sure that we're all tracking each other as we're speaking, and you should absolutely be finding evidence in your book and flipping back, but you still need to hear the person, because I'm going to call on someone else and ask you to defend or refute her answer or his answer. But you've also got to get in the habit of that, and as much as possible, you're going to like, one thing that you can do is like watch your face, watch your like encouragement, so that you're not rounding up for kids.
Can I just clarify? So you said we're all going to be tracking the speaker when the speaker's talking, but then we could be searching for evidence while someone's talking. I was just wondering like what the typical process looks like. I know that it can differ.
I think it depends on teacher. Like I personally think it's fine if they're like tracking and then they're like they agree with something and then they go to search and they're still listening. So like I might see them head nodding, or like the evidence, the idea that they hear something and go search for evidence is actually more clear to me that they're paying attention than if they're staring at something. So like thinking about it that way, like it's not purely compliant. It's compliance for like academic reasons.
Is the overall purpose of the wrap up to get to a main idea?
It is. Yeah. So I cut her off. I just wanted to show that it was like I wanted us to see a discussion that was more like student centered.
And then we put it in the journal, the notebooks.
That would be ideal. You could also, as a whole group, write the main idea and have it similar on a board.
It also says it's like you could highlight a transferable takeaway from coaching that applies to the whole group. So can it also be about skills?
Yeah. And for this one, the feedback I would give to this group, if I were doing transferable skills, we want to make sure that when we're talking about main idea, we're not thinking of just the topic. Our main ideas go beyond the topic. And so I'd want to point that out as soon as I saw it, and then highlight it at the end tomorrow. When you talk about the main idea, I want you to make sure that you're not saying the topic, you're saying the deeper meaning. Cool?
I'm wondering if, like, I'm thinking ahead, should we be, like, thinking about even easels? Because I imagine this is a picnic table or just chairs in the back of the room.
I think, like, your school can decide easels could help. You can also use notebooks, post-it notes, like.
I think the danger with making it from like an elementary perspective, so like a lot of procedural with writing a lot down is it's going to take a lot longer, and you want this to be 20 minutes, and you want it to be like discussion based rather than writing.
Okay, so we've seen all three elements of a guided reading lesson. We've talked about them, so you should have a pretty good mental representation of what's going on. Thank you, Emily, for doing this. Really hard. Thank you guys for watching and observing. When we break out into groups, we're going to do a couple of things. So, in your group, there's usually about 4 of you in the group plus the teacher. I think I tried to make 5 for every group. If there's 6, sorry. Most students are going to understand and be driving at the correct answer. I want you to pick one student in your group. You guys decide as a group who doesn't use text as evidence, doesn't use evidence from the text. So they're just saying their opinion, their general thoughts. Okay, only one though, because this isn't about like having like bombs going off everywhere. Yes.
Should the teacher